We're preparing to stream live on the internet, Shane. It's official.
Yay, exciting.
What a good day for this. It's a Mars day. You're in Aries. I feel like I almost seriously feel like I've like prepared the day. I'm like, here we go. It's all laid out for all of the Shane to come to the cyber house.
Thank you.
All right, you guys, welcome to today's Eat and Greet. Hopefully, in this next hour, we will give you something that was worth the time you took to show up. And today, I love this. Now, I've been stalking people on the internet, as you may know, and that's how they come to the Eat and Greets. So I stalk them and ask them to come. And I saw a presentation that Shane was doing about the houses. And it's not just this average talk of house one is about. It is really about the true motion of the day through the houses and what that sets the tone for in our lives. And I thought it was absolutely incredible. So I am so excited today. Hopefully you have your charts. Let me know in the comment section what you are bringing for your snack today too. And Shane, welcome to the Cyber House.
Thank you, Stormie. It's so great to be here. Thank you for the invite. I'm just thrilled to be here. And
Yeah.
I just want to add too that I just love what you're doing with these eat and greets in the community, because I think it was Lynn Bell who I heard talk about the goddess Aphrodite, she said, when Aphrodite walks, flowers bloom in her footsteps. And with your eat and greets, you've been growing this beautiful garden of astrologers you welcome onto your show and into the community. And it's just beautiful. It's just such a reflection of who you are, Stormie. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. All of my Venus heard that. Thank you. I'm so thrilled that all of you guys just keep saying yes. There is a lot to give and a lot to receive in this community. And if we just keep saying yes to each other, I think this is how we grow that garden. So it's very, very exciting to have you here. And we were joking a little bit, before, just truly about like being able to Aries and being able in this time where we're confined to be able to take your fire and like turn it into something beautiful. And we're doing that on the internet right now.
Yep.
So I think
Aries here. Aries here, everybody.
I support all the Aries energy. That's my Venus and Aries speaking to all of you. Oh, and somebody in the comment section already said that Nygaard is her maiden name.
Oh, congratulations.
So
Lovely.
he's like, I never hear that name. So today is the day. Thank you very, very much. Okay. All right. So Mercury retrograde got me, you guys.
Oh,
Before
no.
we get in here, I just have to tell you, Mercury came for me. Now, if you don't know or you haven't, this is your first time here, welcome, welcome. But I have Mercury at the top of my chart, so very much so in my business house, a public house. And I was really excited to get prepared early for our interview today. And I took my car yesterday to get the brakes done, and I unlooped my house keys from my fob. And the house keys fell out in my husband's car. So I came home today to get ready for this interview and had locked myself out of the house.
No.
I was like, Mercury is coming for me. So I drove 20 minutes to my husband's job to get his keys. And then it has all worked out beautifully. But I laugh because I just planned for it this morning. I'm like, I know you're out there. I know that you've been on the move, Sir Mercury. I'm prepared for whatever effery you have got for me today. And here we are. So hopefully
Well,
you're having a good Mercury retrograde.
mine's been good so far. So let's hope the god with the wings on his head and the wings on his heels is kind of flying off elsewhere to create mischief rather than here.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Well, and you had some cool stuff going on around Mercury retrograde in general. And I loved it. We were talking about it before. Do you want to share that?
Yeah, it's I'd like to kind of reflect back on different things during each Mercury retrograde, because it tends to gets a bad rap in the popular culture, like it's to blame for all the technology snafus and mishaps and all of that. But I mean, I don't know, those kind of things do happen throughout the year. It's but what I was thinking about this time was, if you've seen the movie Tootsie way back 1982, and there's a YouTube clip of this moment out there. I did a search. It was Tootsie Better Man, and if you want to search that up later, you can find that. But I was able to pull up the clip, but it's where the Dustin Hoffman character runs into, it's near the end where he runs into the Jessica Lange character, and I can't remember the names off the top of my head, but they just have this moment where they're looking at each other, and it's very Libra relationship kind of thing. And she says, "I miss Dorothy." And Dustin Hoffman was Dorothy in the movie. And this was after the big reveal and everything, which, by the way, trickster Mercury is always behind the big reveal. When you see something that you weren't expecting and is creates when things aren't as they appear to be. But she says, "I miss Dorothy." And Dustin Hoffman says, after another pause, "You don't need to. She's right here." And that fabulous line that I mix up every time I try to say it or memorize it. But he says to her, he realized he was a better man as a woman than he ever was with a woman as a man, or something like that. And it's just this play on words that's just funny, but really touching at the same time. And then he adds, "I just need to learn to do it without the dress."
Mm.
And it's so meaningful, and it just felt very like that sort of when Scorpio can be that transforming quality, and how their relationship through the movie grew and deepened, and they got very connected, but it kind of all blew up with the great reveal. But that touching moment where he realizes, and it feels like Mercury retrograde, when he realizes, "I just need to learn to do it without the dress." So that was my Mercury retrograde reflection this time round.
Yeah, but it is a good one. Man, that is a good one. And I tell you, I feel like just Mercury retrograde starting in that energy of Scorpio. It's Scorpio season in general. I really love this idea of kind of going back over what needs to be detoxed in our relationships to allow that Phoenix moment of it needs to die off like this so that it can live like this. Like it is it's a gorgeous time of the year. It is so like, wait a minute, I've got good stuff, but I have to learn how to do that, how to transform that. So
Absolutely.
I love it.
Absolutely.
Good movie
Yeah.
reference. Stream Tootsie.
Yeah. And I'll add now too that I brought my food, a bowl
Yes.
of it's edamame with more butter than I could ever anticipate, and just sea salt all over it. I'll be talking for the slide deck, so I don't know how much I'll actually have to eat, but I love edamame.
Well, and I just, you know what? People who bring food get my love and support for sure. And I have grapes today, friends. And I did
Lovely.
have steak in here, but I was like, look, I'll just look greedy on camera. Let me eat that right now. And then I'll have my grapes so I can look like I have some taste.
I'm doing steak later, so I'm with you.
Yay. I love it. Well, I'm pumped to share this journey that you're about to take us on. And I really, when I saw this the first time, that's how I felt. You know what? Here's the other part of my little Venus and Aries. I was like, okay, well, whatever, get to the ninth house. I'm ready right now. Because that's where mine is at. I was like, ninth house, second house. I want to hear about that. You know what I mean? But just the way that you describe it. And if you guys have not had the opportunity to learn that the motion is actually, the sun rises in the east, sets in the west. If you haven't had the chance to see the actual motion in the sky, separate from the paper that we look at, I hope it stirs you, because it really did make me think and relate to the sky differently as well. So Shane,
Yeah.
I'm ready when you are.
Okay.
The people down here. Oh, this is so good. Somebody has a homemade bowl of veggie rice and chicken soup. Yes. Yes. And people are clapping. That's right, Stephen. When people bring food to the eat and greet, they get a little cheer. It's okay for my tea drinking friends. I still love you, right? Still love you. I didn't realize it was such a big deal for people to like eat on camera. So I feel like that's an interesting thing that I've learned in 2020 about human behavior.
Oh, I didn't think about eating on camera, but here we are.
Right. Well,
So I'm getting the slide deck ready. Let me just make sure I hit all the right things here.
yeah, beautiful.
PowerPoint slideshow. And
Yay, it's coming,
are we there?
guys.
Yes. Good, good, good.
Look at this. And I have to tell you, like, I have thought about this, the photo that you use for your bio stuff. Like, that jacket is fabulous.
Oh, thank you. It's one of my absolute favorites.
I get it. It's
And I hope
really
it will
good.
fit me for the rest of my life.
I just did a clean out. I did a detox. I was like, I was hoping that would fit me for the rest of my life. And turns out I like food, so it doesn't.
So are we good with the slides showing?
Yes, it's beautiful. And we are ready for you.
Okay.
Guys, I'll be answering questions down in the comment section as always, okay?
Sounds good. So I just wanted to give everybody a little background. I've spent the last almost decade now as part of my Minnesota Jung Association that works on keeping the works of Carl Jung alive and thriving and growing. And I had originally learned archetypes 12 years ago, I think, with Carolyn Mace at her CMED Institute. And all the while, like Lynn Bell taught about the houses there, and I started to learn about astrology at the same time. So all this while, I've kind of been trying to find different ways to mix Jung archetypes and astrology together. And this talk, which I call From Sunrise Through Nightfall, the 12 Houses of the Zodiac, is kind of my first big dive into applying a particular Jungian concept, which we'll see in a little bit. But I did want to add, I do have a very sort of poetic version of this that is published in the Mountain Astrologer. So this one's going to be more interactive, less scripted, as if I can try that. And if you want to get the poetic one that has more detail and has everything written out, you can get the April-May 2020 issue of the Mountain Astrologer on their website. They do sell the individual issues.
Congratulations on that, by the way. It is a neat thing to join the industry by joining publications. So congratulations.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. It was lots of paper getting that one written. So I have a number of slides here just to kind of set the stage where we're going with this, because the particular Jung quote that I just love, it's my favorite of his, is this idea of stick with the image. And I love it because when we think of the image, we can think of the imagination, the imagination. So when we look at Jung saying also that image is psyche, we begin to understand that when we're imagining, we're active in psyche's world. And with psyche as the Greek word for soul, we can understand that when we're imagining, we're ensouled. And this is so important. And it's actually what the ancient peoples did thousands of years ago who pioneered astrology. They looked to the night sky and they imagined. And they stuck with the images in the night sky, which became constellations. And they tracked the movements of these constellations, and in time they became animated figures, a ram, a lion, or a crab. We can say the ancient night sky was animated, as was the ancient psyche. And we've stuck with these images for thousands of years. I mean, these are the same images that have been around thousands of years. And I wonder sometimes if it's maybe the images that have stuck with us. I mean, you never know. But
Mm-hmm.
either way, it's like they've inspired the imagination for thousands of years. And we see that the constellations have become is what we work with today, these images, the symbols, and the astrology. So it's like this is familiar to all of us. And since the zodiac is and astrology, the sky is filled with images and possibilities, we can approach any number of areas of astrology in different ways. So what we're here to talk about today is the 12 houses. So it's like we may all be familiar with the modern understanding of the houses, because I mean, when we see the unconscious in the 12th house, I mean, I don't think the ancients really talked a lot about the unconscious or the ego the way we talk about them today. But Hellenistic astrology on the third and the ninth house axis, they have goddess and god. And then fifth house and sixth house, good fortune and bad fortune. So it's a very different way of looking at the houses through this lens. And medical astrology it places different areas of the body in different health conditions throughout the 12 houses. So what's amazing with these is each version sticks to its own images and each imagines something different. So today, what I really wanted to talk about was the 12 houses through the time of day and the quality of the light and the darkness throughout the day and the night, and the symbolism of all this. I look at the 12 houses as the sun moves through a 24-hour day from the 12th house clockwise through the first house.
Which is really different to understand that than maybe when you're first learning and you're kind of in class and you just walk through houses 1 through 12 in this very counterclockwise motion. And this is why I think that the astronomy is as equally important to understanding the astrology, because that is not the actual movement of what's happening. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And tracking like kind of what humans generally tend to do collectively through the course of a day,
Mhm.
kind of mapping that onto the quality of the light. I mean, it shows a lot. And I love this little cartoon. It's so cute. But it's like Stormie was saying, it's not a backwards way of looking at the houses. It's just a different way. And you'll see. And I just have to add here for consistency, I decided to go with equal houses because, you know, with time zones and geography and seasons, they all influence the house systems differently. But I found if I had to have something consistent to look at, I went with equal houses because it gives a 2-hour block of time consistently for each house. And
Brilliant.
it really shows a lot.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to um, touch a little bit on sect. It's not, it's just, I'm approaching this with a sense of sect, where we look at just strictly what's above the horizon and what's below the horizon. That's kind of how I broke this up to look at. Um, and with above the horizon, houses 12 through 7, I've come to see those as what the day houses. And it becomes the world of the ancient mythic Apollo, the god of the sun, because we see the sun during the day. And it's here where visibility, clarity, knowledge, and order shine. And for the houses 6 through 1 below the horizon, which I'm referring to as the night houses, I looked at the world of Nyx, the goddess of night, because in her world, imagination, fantasy, wishes, and dreams fly free, as do
Mm.
terrors and frights of the night. So, I mean, there's a lot going on below the horizon. Are you with me, Stormie?
I'm with you, and
Great.
chatting as well. So we're all
Oh,
with
cool.
you. Like people are in, loving the graphics. This is really great.
Thank you. And anybody who's in the chat, if you have questions, please ask, because we can stop anywhere along the way and address questions. And yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's like a
So
real
here's a
journey.
touch of what some of what Apollo represents. Because in ancient myth, each day Apollo harnesses his 4 horses and carries the sun in tow across the sky from sunrise to sunset. So his domain is the day. And as his chariot crosses the sky, the world is illuminated and visible and clear. And as the god of the sun, so think about the sun as the center of the solar system. I mean, planets in our solar system are ordered around the sun, symbolizing that it brings order. And it brings it to the solar system as it does an astrology chart. And we'll see here that the houses above the horizon, they do bring visibility. Is done. I set the stage, and here we are at the 12th house. When we look at the horizon line, the ascendant to the descendant, the 12th house in this model covers 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock a.m. Dawn is upon us. And I forgot I had that little animation in there, but but I wanted to point out that it's following the sun through the day, but this isn't about where the sun is in a chart. Because you can have planets in the 12th house that aren't the sun, and you can think about how this may apply to those planets. But a lot of the examples will have the sun in the particular house, just kind of how it worked out. So dawn is upon us. There we go. Good morning. This is the light of the 12th house, the sun rising above the horizon line. And it's that Apollonian quality of bringing what was concealed, what the night concealed, bringing it to light. So this is where we get the emphasis on what is visible. And I love quotes. You'll see a lot of quotes here. But I found this one in Mary Ballaw's book, A Summer to Remember. And she says, a sunrise or sunset can be ablaze with brilliance and arouse all the passion, all the yearning in the soul of the beholder.
Ugh, I don't know if it's just the season, but that is delicious.
Isn't it? It's just extraordinary. I mean, I wasn't taught about the 12th house with this quote in mind. Oh. But it's true. I mean, look at this image of the book cover. I mean, that sun is so far off in the distance, which, there's that part of the quality where the isolation of the 12th house. Things are so far away that it can bring on that sense of isolation.
Yeah.
With this quality of, yeah.
Look at that. This author was also nationally best-selling author of No Man's Mistress. I mean, if you're living your 12th house like this, you're like, I don't have time to be your side piece. I'm sorry. I'm out here yearning with my soul.
Absolutely. So we even see this in pictures of sunrises. I mean, sometimes there's this steamy passion that's just expressed by this quality of light at this particular time of day. So we'll see a chart with this in a few slides, but I also wanted to point out how if you are a photographer at all, the 12th house falls into what is considered the golden hour of photography. It's the golden hour is a quality of light that lights its subjects at their best. Think about it as light's equivalent of alchemical gold. I mean, compare this imagery with understanding the 12th house as prisons or even self-undoing. This is just a very different way of beginning to understand this house. Photographer Michael Freeman explains in a book of his, which I actually don't have the title right here. I think The Heart of Photography. But he says the hour or two at the ends of the day, so sunrise and sunset, is the authoritative best, a kind of ideal that all other lighting conditions aspire to. Above all, the golden hour experience is warm and fairly luxurious, rich and soft. So we see here how the glow of a rising or setting sun makes everyone and everything look its best. So when I was kind of doing my research on charts, trying to figure out what this quality of light looks like, I came across this chart. So you'll see, I like to take an artistic approach to my presentations and my astrology. And in this one, I'm painting with a very broad brush. So it's not going to look at the specifics of like aspects and other houses, but this one is specifically a focus on the 12th house, where we'll see the sun, Mercury, Pluto, and the south node. So when we keep in mind this idea of the 12th house as the golden hour of photography, and it lights its subjects at their best, I love this chart of Giorgio Armani. I mean, it's just extraordinary, because when you think about it, his psyche seems like it was filled with this quality of the golden hour light, because his fashion, the hautest of couture and sophistication, it shows people at their best.
Yeah.
And I mean, for me, it creates that yearning to longing to wear some of his clothes, but it's way out of my range. But it's like the quality that he brings to fashion is just so beautiful and rich. And some of these look very warm. Not all of his stuff is very warm, but I just loved how that idea of his aesthetic comes from the golden hour of sunrise, fairly luxurious, rich, and soft indeed.
Yeah. And kind of that 12th housey in between the worlds. This could be two things kind of vibe to most of his clothing, warm on the outside, functional on the inside, like bridging
Yeah.
the two worlds. It's really neat. And I just love this. Look, he's like, I just make all of this, and these are my tennis shoes.
Yeah, absolutely. He's always wearing tennis shoes in these kinds of pictures.
Humble.
So I wanted to,
He's humble.
yeah. So I wanted to kind of go specifically into the arousing all the passion and all the yearning part of this. Because I mean, it doesn't really apply to Armani per se, because I mean, he's more of that golden hour light. But with this, there is a chart that it kind of helped me have a bit of a revelation about this person. And though with equal houses, it becomes just the lone sun in the 12th house, with that yearning and the passion, we can start to understand more of George Michael.
Ooh.
He was born at sunrise, the sunrise of the 12th house, when the sun is ablaze with brilliance. I mean, he was ablaze with brilliance. And in all honesty, he was my first huge crush as a teenager.
Oh my God, I'm so
So
glad you're saying that, because I was gonna marry him. I was 5. I was like, I'm gonna marry him, Mom. And I'm singing with Wham and pick me up before you go. Oh my God.
yeah, but it's like when you think of his music, I mean, especially those ballads, I mean,
Mhm.
there was just such a quality of longing and yearning. And there was so much passion that he brought to what he did. And if you hear the audiences in like live performances, I mean, they're screaming too. I mean, everything was just ablaze
Yeah.
at his shows and stuff. So I just thought that was really uh, fascinating to see this. And as we had talked, I usually would have a media clip here, but I'm going to skip it just because I don't want Stormie's video to get dinged by the copyright people. So I'm going to skip
The
past
YouTube
this.
police.
Yeah.
I was gonna,
but,
if
but look,
I didn't marry him, it was gonna be Michael Jackson. And I should have known right then that my picker needed some adjusting. I was like, they're not on my track. All these years in Saturn work later.
yeah. Well, for me, if it wasn't George Michael, it was going to be Morten Harket, the lead singer of the pop group, the Norwegian group Aha.
Okay.
I mean, still to this day, just one of the most beautiful human beings around. So I'm going to
These
skip
clubhouse
past that.
people are beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah. Yep. So there's So in a summary of the 12th house, and we can move through some of the other houses a little bit quicker, but I wanted to bring in George Michael there. So what I kind of summarize with this is planets in the 12th house, they can reflect Art's golden hour of beauty. They can arouse all the passion and all the yearning of the soul. And as a start of a new day, they can indicate a new way of looking at things.
Mm.
So here we are with the 11th house. So as the golden hour light ebbs away, we move into the 11th house, which is 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock a.m. And I found a quote by an architect, Louis Kahn. He said, "The sun never knew how wonderful it was until it fell on the wall of a building." I love that quote.
Ah, I love
Because
that.
and it's actually during the 11th house that the sun rises to an angle where it can start to fall on the walls of buildings.
Sure. Well, and from that 11th house placement, we think, kind of traditionally of Aquarius, the skyscraper. So it's almost as
Mm,
if they beautifully
yeah,
worked together to provide a reflection that is needed.
absolutely.
Mm.
Amazing, yes. Um, so I was trying to think about like what does this mean in terms of like the day and the quality of this light? And it's interesting because what starts to happen at this hour, this time frame, is that the sun begins to warm the day. And in photography, the quality of the angle of this light is called hard lighting. So it's sort of almost like that intensity of the angle is what helps start to warm the day. And I kind of went with the image of bubbling water. Because you know how water starts with one bubble and then another bubble and another bubble
Yeah.
until it's bubbles everywhere? It's kind of the same with traffic at this time of day. One car sets out on the road, followed by another car, followed by another car, until eventually it's cars everywhere. So I thought that imagery just seemed very fitting
Yeah.
because the workday is beginning for a lot of people, and the day is a buzz with movement. And there's something about that with the 11th house, as we'll see. So here's a chart for the 11th house. We'll see Moon, Mars, Sun, and Venus in the 11th house. So from the fashion runways of Italy, we can put some shrimp on the Barbie and look at our 11th house example of Australian singer Kylie Minogue. And I hope everybody knows who she is. She was a favorite of mine since the very beginning.
Sure.
But what was amazing is that when she first hit the international music scene, she had a single called "I Should Be So Lucky." And her image was this cute, adorable young girl with just curls for days. She was like all smiles and charm. But as her career progressed, I mean, and she was growing up, her image began to change, and her developing sexuality was brought into her work and her public image. And she's had hits and misses on the music scene, but she kind of burst back with this dynamic sexual image. And for me, this is the mythic goddess Venus. Aphrodite was born, and because she's the goddess of love and beauty. And her original songs were all about like yearning for love. I should be so lucky. She sings, "Dreaming's all I do. If only they'd come true." She would look at pictures in the music video, just pictures of guys she was dreaming about, but they were just so far away. But this is the archetypal view of Kylie as Aphrodite, because the image, her shifting image, makes the archetype visible and clear. And you
Mm.
know, Venus has been referred to as the goddess on the mountaintop. So as the 11th house climbs us towards the 10th, it's fitting. And if you know Kylie Minogue's career, you might recognize that her 2010 album is appropriately titled Aphrodite.
Oh, killed it. Killed it.
And the signals of a goddess are one of the qualities is that they're worshipped. And Kylie has been worshipped around the world. So there you see the change from "I should be so lucky" to Aphrodite. And I wanted to throw in the Placidus version of the chart here because it does show the Venus and the sun in the 10th house in that version. So there is that quality of Aphrodite on the mountaintop. And I
Sure.
don't know, has anybody seen her video for the single All the Lovers? Because her music shifted along with the image, because where she was once dreaming of love became about all the lovers that have gone before. And this is just a screenshot from the video because it totally cracked me up, because that's her at the top there,
Oh,
at the goddess on the mountaintop. And I was like, 11th house community at its sexiest,
right.
because that wasn't the image that I was taught when I was originally learning about the 11th house. But it
Sure.
just cracks me up.
Yeah, she's like, I went from dreaming to being like, kiss my feet.
Absolutely, yep.
All of you. Okay, since this is
Yes,
a community activity,
everyone in that pyramid.
is allowed to kiss my feet. It's
Yeah,
beautiful because you do want to be seen. You want some accolades from the 11th house. So this is beautiful. What a great image.
yeah. And the video's out on YouTube. You can watch it there, but there's a making of the video that's out too, but I haven't watched it because I like wondering more about how they actually got that big tower of people rather than actually wanting to know the truth behind it.
Sure, sure. Keep the mystery.
Wanted to just throw in a second example for this house, particularly because this helps see how it's not always about where the sun is, but the quality of the light at the 11th house time of 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock, because this is the chart of Oprah Winfrey. And when
Mm,
you think about it, and that idea of like one bubble, more bubbles, bubbles everywhere, she started her career with a radio show. And the radio show kind of grew to a couple more stations, and then it branched out into a TV show. And the TV show was syndicated, more and more TV shows, until eventually, as we know, it's Oprah everywhere. So that's kind of with her the Mars and the Saturn quality of just going step by step, bit by bit. And she even has this quote: with every experience, you alone are painting your own canvas, thought by thought, choice by choice. And when you get that thought by thought, eventually it adds up to really deep thoughts and a lot of learning and a lot of thinking. And choice by choice, we build a life. So I thought that was very reflective of the quality of the light in this house.
love that. I love
So to
that.
sum it up, planets in the 11th house, they can indicate what is heating up or bubbling up or building up. They show what movement is developing, and the idea of starting with one and growing. Which brings us to the 10th house. We're heading up toward high noon. This is 10 o'clock a.m. to noon. So with the sun, I mean, just imagine when the sun is directly above us. When it reaches this point, I mean, it's shining the most light over the most terrain. And any shadows that there might be are they're the slimmest shadows during the entire day. So symbolically, we can see the domain of Apollo here, visibility, clarity, and order at its strongest. All is revealed at high noon. So I remember taking a screen capture of this years ago. It's from the TV series NCIS. And this is Mossad director Orly Elbaz. She's standing before a wall of windows. And I love this because it's so 10th house, with this huge wall of windows and all the light that comes through. So she was standing here with, I think it was Tony Donoso, and
Mm,
she says, "These windows were installed at the request of my predecessor. He believed that with light comes clarity."
oh, I love that
Isn't that
show.
great? Yeah, oh, it's my favorite. I've never missed an episode.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
But
good
her
stuff.
predecessor had an Apollonian mindset and a vision, because he accurately recognized the clarity that comes with light. So we see the windows of the 10th house reveal the most light. Therefore, we have the most clarity.
Yeah, the reference to the predecessor, I think about that in that very 10th house, kind of Capricornian, the tradition, my traditions,
Oh, yes,
kind
yes.
of energy as well. That's it's so interesting how we will say things or the things that come to us, you know, and they really do align with these houses, whether or not we're trying to or not.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic. I hadn't thought about it in that way, but it fits so well.
Mm.
Um, so when I was thinking more on the 10th house, like with the clarity, I was thinking of like, you know, in old Western, American Western film showdowns, they always happened at high noon. And and I was kind of like, I started wondering why on earth did they always happen at high noon? And I don't have a very um, cowboy western kind of psyche about me. But I came across this quote Madeline Miller had in her book, Modern Telling of the Circe Myth. She says, Odysseus had told me once that half of a duel is maneuvering around the sun, trying to get the light to stab at your enemy's eyes.
Mm.
And I just thought, oh, wow, that's why they're always at high noon. Because when you think about the sun directly above both parties, it doesn't really offer either one of them an advantage. It's an equal playing field for everybody. And I just thought that was really remarkable. So there was one chart I wanted to use for this example because, I mean, look at that stellium in Sagittarius in the 10th house. I mean, none other than Ronan Farrow, investigative journalist and the initiator of the Me Too movement via his bringing to light the extensive sexual assault allegations against Hollywood giant Harvey Weinstein.
Mm.
So, I mean, this stellium, it's like it almost gives him the ability to shine light into even the darkest places. And his investigative reporting did that. I mean, it was bound to be far reaching, clear, bright, and direct, as we've seen with what he was able to reveal through his research and reporting. So if you've read his book, Catch and Kill, his most recent book, it's a fantastic book, and I highly recommend the audio version because he reads it himself. So you
Which is
feel
so
like
nice.
halfway through it, like you're best friends with him because you're hearing so much of him.
Yeah, I love that. I love like a good audiobook and anything read by Jeremy Irons. Oh man, I'm like, yes, please. Please tell me about sandwiches. I would love to hear more about
Read me the alphabet, please.
it's like Jeremy and everybody from Australia. I'm like, I don't even care what you're talking about.
Nice. But his work, Farrow did manage to reveal so much, and he dealt with um, discovering cover-ups and covert operatives hiding in the proverbial shadows, the all sorts of secret recordings, widely known and poorly kept secrets. He had death threats,
Yeah.
but all along there were paper trails of evidence to support him. So he did find this way to, while Weinstein and everybody were trying to bury the truth, he seems naturally designed to uncover the truth in a really remarkable way. And I had to include this because would anyone without a 10th house stellium be able to post this on Instagram? That level of clarity. So with the 10th house, we can see that planets here, they shine the most light from the highest position. There's something about them where nothing is hidden, and they don't necessarily take sides. And they each bring their own particular kind of clarity. My sister has, I can't remember off the top of my head, 3 or 4 planets in the 10th house. And they're in a water sign, and she's an artist. She creates beautiful art. And for her, creating that art brings clarity for her and for people experiencing her art. It's really fantastic. So now the ninth house, Stormie, your house.
Well, this is where my
um,
son is. It's just busy on the second house, though. So I'm here for both.
so after reaching the highest point of the chart, we enter the ninth house from noon to 2 o'clock p.m. Here's some images. The sun begins its descent. Its bright light begins to calm, and the thin shadows, they begin to grow. So I was trying to think of this, and it's traditionally when we move from the ninth house towards the 10th house, it represents moving from expanded horizons to a more focused area of authority. But in this view, as we move through a day, thus moving from the 10th to the ninth, we're going from clarity in what we know and see to the realization that there is much more we don't know or have yet to see. And I mean, it's so subtle, but such a different way of looking at it. And it's like, I don't know if you work a day job. Do you ever notice how the afternoon just feels very different than the morning? That has a lot to do with the shifting of the light and the different qualities that these houses represent. But
Sure.
we
And
see,
it's interesting how it hits our bodies too, right? How our bodies kind of naturally know that it's like, oh, there has been a shift in the force.
yeah,
And we're able to respond accordingly. And it's usually with coffee
absolutely.
or a siesta, depending on where you are in the world, right?
Yeah. Since COVID, my afternoons tend to be long walks, which is amazing. But to just get that energy back because the vibe is changing.
Mhm.
Um, but what we start to see with the shadow here is that it symbolizes the unknown. And the ninth house light suggests unknowns and possibilities. There is more to the world than what we literally see with our eyes. So I have a number of charts, but just two examples here. But here's one to see an example. We can swing into the chart of jazz legend Ella Fitzgerald, because
Mm,
she has a pretty powerful ninth house with Jupiter, Sun, Venus, and Mars. I like to think of them improvising their way around her ninth house. So when I was trying to think, okay, so we have Ella Fitzgerald and this quality of light suggesting possibilities. Um, I wanted to put this in put her life in the context of the times she lived in, because she lived during the Great Depression. It's a time when people were focused on survival, but also at this time, jazz's swing era began, and Fitzgerald was one of its leading ladies. And I found this really remarkable because from the first moment she sang at an Apollo Theater talent show, audiences wanted more. Her
yeah,
career burst on the scene when she released her playful version of the nursery rhyme A Tisket a Tasket, and that single filled the airwaves for 17 weeks. So I was thinking, when we think of Ella Fitzgerald, when society was immersed in heavy survival issues, what she did was, with her music, she opened up the possibility of enjoyment, even for a moment, as her swing music allowed listeners to lift their spirits and get happy and forget about their daily hardships and troubles for a time. And I thought, what a calling in life, to be born during the Great Depression, but have this chart that helps people see other possibilities than just the heaviness and the weight of a Great Depression. That was
sure, sure.
really powerful.
Well, and with we think about the challenges that were still surrounding so much of race at that time too. And she's got the benefic of a daytime chart up there really saying, look, the arts and music win again,
Mm,
as it's bigger than all of us. That thing that makes you want to move, that's just in all of us. How
yep.
gorgeous.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. Just stunning. So I wanted to have another example. Stormie, do you know who John Eric Hexam is?
Uh-uh. Who is that?
Have you ever heard of the TV show Voyagers?
Oh, yeah.
He is Phineas Bogg in Voyagers.
Okay.
Another of my crushes. I like putting my crushes in my astrology presentations.
We support you. We here support you fully.
And if we look again, it's like another really powerful ninth house in this chart. And I'm sorry, I forgot, this one's not the equal houses, so that's my bad. But it's worth pointing out that regardless of the house system, the planets will still be in the same place in the sky,
Sure.
regardless of how we on Earth decide to break it down to into a particular house system. So regardless here, all those planets are very high in the sky for John Eric Hexam's chart. And it's like, what does he have to do with the ninth house? I mean, first, I loved the idea of as he was a voyager, and they literally drop out of the sky and land wherever they're going to land. So I thought, you know, from that high perspective, we'd see some of their like thuds as they hit the ground. And that's a
Sure,
great
sure.
idea. But what's fascinating about his life is that he died very young in an accident because he was on a set and he was playing with a gun, a prop gun that had blanks in it. But he acted like he was shooting himself and it actually ended up killing him. And I thought, you know, it's one of those things where I always wondered over the years here and there when I would think back, I was like, wonder why that would have happened to somebody who was showing a lot of promise. And because if you watch an interview with him on YouTube or something like that, regardless of the looks, he's just an incredibly charismatic guy. But
Sure.
what I learned years later is that he was an organ donor, and 4 or 5 of his organs went to other people very quickly.
Mm.
And it just kind of got me thinking and philosophizing or just contemplating that just the idea that when it's our time, wherever we happen to be. And I don't know if I truly believe that, but this got me wondering about that possibility, the very ninth house way of considering another possibility of what I would normally think.
Yeah.
So at the time of his death, he helped other people continue their life. And I just thought that was like, it's really quite profound.
Well, and it's I don't know if you've seen it, but I just took my daughter and I went to go see the movie Two Hearts that's out
Nope.
right now. Oh my gosh, it's so crazy because the kid is young. He's young, he's in college and he he gets sick, essentially what happens, and they show this scene where it's like, oh yeah, I got hurt and then da, 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 happens, and then in the end you find out that's not what happened. But when he comes out of like the little coma thing, he says, I had this vision of being so much more than I know that I am, and that it was meant for something. And so you find
Wow.
out in the end that he never wakes up, but he gives his heart to this person who was dying, and the rest of his organs go to other people as well. So I love that you made that connection. And then the
Yeah.
family who gets the heart builds an entire organization and foundation for people who today they still use it. If you're in that area and you are a transplant family, you have a place to stay for free when you
Oh,
go.
wow.
And so it's just grown and grown and grown and grown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So if you haven't seen the
incredible.
movie, stream that also. You have
Noted.
an active playlist. We got to get Tootsie, the Voyagers, Two Hearts. It's a very busy weekend.
And by the end of this talk, there'll be more. So in a summary of the ninth house, it's planets here, they see something more, and there's more than meets the eye. But also that quality of with increasing shadow comes decreasing certainty. So it opens up possibilities, and they raise more questions than answers.
Beautiful.
So here's the eighth house, our lovely, challenging, difficult, deep eighth house,
Ooh, coming
which
to the
is
fall.
as the sun continues its descent in the afternoon, we come here to the eighth house. So it's 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock p.m. And here's where I have more from Michael Freeman. And here's the title of his book, Capturing Light, The Heart of Photography. And what's interesting, it's very interesting, is that he describes this time of the afternoon as the most difficult for photographers. So think of like the 12th house and the golden hour. Here we are at like not the opposite of that, but it's just the most difficult for photographers because the angle is again considered hard lighting, though at this time of day, his description includes unspecial, unkind, and ugly, creating dense shadows and hard edges and high contrast for
Mm,
subjects that are being photographed. I mean, when I hear that, I think he could be describing the way I've heard the eighth house talked about in different ways. These
yeah.
adjectives, I mean, it just brings that, it animates the eighth house in that particular kind of way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But he also says about this time that angular objects tend to do better with lighting that shows off their hard edges and contrasting surfaces. So when it's right for the subject, the effect is strong and eye-catching. And it's like, I think a lot about this still to this day, because it's so thought-provoking. And I was like, what if planets in the eighth house, if we consider them angular objects, since they are angled in the afternoon light, I mean, they're clearly meant to be in the eighth house for charts with people with eighth house planets. So it's right for the subject. So what is the effect of these planets in the eighth house? Um,
Mm,
I went to one of my favorite poets, Charles Baudelaire, and look at that, all those planets right there. And here's an actual distinction where this is the equal house version, and I click it ahead, and that's the Placidus version. So you see all those planets are still in the same spot. But either way, it's like there's a profound stellium going on with this area of the chart for him. And it's, I see this picture of him, and he's certainly got some dense shadows around those eyes. But he was a 19th century French poet and a writer and a critic. And if you know his poetry, you might know it from Les Fleurs du Mal, which translates as the flowers of evil. Um, Here's some images. So it's actually quite fitting. You can judge a book by its cover in these two cases,
a little
because it's like
something.
it's like these dark shadows and the high contrast aesthetic. It just resonates with his chart. So the publishers were like spot on with their instincts about this art. But when we consider these poems, the Fleur de Mal specifically, what it is, it's a collection of 160 poems expressing the changing nature of beauty in the
Yeah.
rapidly industrializing Paris during Baudelaire's lifetime. So think about it here with beauty and industrialization. I mean, this shift between romanticism of the late 1700s and industrialization in the early 1800s, it shows this changing aesthetic. And Baudelaire just tuned into that in a remarkable way through that hyper focus of his eighth house. Because romanticism, I mean, it focused on the natural world and emotional and physical passion. And this was a painting somebody did of John Keats's La Belle Dame Sans Merci, about the fairy woman who kissed knights in shining armor on their travels and put them to sleep. So it's like
Mm,
this got this mystical and supernatural quality. But then
sure.
you get industrialization coming in, And I mean, look at the image there. I mean, it's this world of hard edges and dense shadows and high contrast, because it's about coal mines and steel mills and assembly lines and textile factories. So it's like Baudelaire just managed to see this. And he wrote about it so well that in the world of poetry, Le Fleur de Mal is classic.
Sure. And I know he's got an essay of some variety in some of his earlier writings where he's like, everybody should just be drunk. You should always be drunk. But
Yeah,
what you're going to be drunk on, you
yeah,
choose that essentially. But, of all of the things I remember from French literature class, that's what we all remembered from college is we should all be drunk, right? Like that's what we all remember. Good job, Charles.
yeah. He's extraordinary, just really extraordinary. So with this, I mean, do you know the author Robert Heinlein?
Mm-mm.
I didn't put his chart here, but in the fuller version of my presentation about the houses above the horizon, I use his chart because he writes science fiction fantasy novels, but there's always this quality of high contrast between like Earth life and this alien life, and the people encounters that get difficult and how that's managed. And he just has another, like one of those, I think it's a full stellium in his 8th house.
Wow.
So we can see planets in the 8th house. It's like they may bring hard edges and high contrast, but that's sort of meant for the planets in this house.
Yeah, we're going
And
to
the
get a
hard,
different perspective.
mm-hmm, and the
Mm.
hard and angular quality, it actually works for the planets in the 8th house. So to kind of tune into that is pretty remarkable. And there's just that quality of dense shadows.
And it's only like 6 p.m. Right? Like now we're just now moving to the 4 to 6 p.m. time slot.
Yeah.
We've done all of this and it's just
Yes.
half
And
the
I
day.
have to admit, the houses below the horizon are my favorite out of the two sects.
Okay.
So we'll keep moving along. So, but as the sunlit day is nearing its close, we come to the 7th house. Yeah, 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock p.m. It's the sunset. I mean, cowboys ride off into the sunset in old westerns, and poets write dreamy, romantic poetry about the sunset. And it
Mm.
is the other side of photography's golden hour. But it's also the sunset that certain cultures have feared, because night is imminent, and night brings out demons, witches, banshees, and other nocturnal terrors. So it's whether it's poetry or demons, it's inevitably a sunset that we can see inspires the imagination and a sense of wonder.
It definitely did for me, just a practical life thing I learned this last year because I'm in Colorado and as the sun goes down, we have these huge mountains. So well
Oh,
before the
wow.
sun is down, we stop seeing it because it's hidden behind the mountains. But we
Yeah.
went to California this year and we were on the beach and I just remember looking over and watching and it was just flat and the sun was going down and then all of a sudden it was just gone. And I was like, what happened? Oh my God. Earth freaking ate the sun. Like, what happened? It was a completely different experience where I understand, depending on where they were in the world, why you would have a sense of panic. I watch
Yeah.
the sunset most of the time. Our house faces so that we can watch it come up and down. And there's a piece that comes with it, but with it flat and nothing in between. I was like, oh my God, it's gone. We're all going to die. And COVID.
I love the sunset. It's like, I'm just one of those people who, I'm a night person, even though technically my astrology chart is a day chart. I'm all about the night. So bring on the sunset.
Yeah.
But I want to play this interview clip. This is from Norwegian opera soprano Lisa Davidsen. She's sharing her thoughts on Strauss's Im Abendrot, which is from his 4 last songs. And this is a promo piece from the the recording company. So I think it should be okay to play. And I'm not sure about the volume, how it'll sound to everybody. So if be ready to turn up or down the volume accordingly. Thank you.
Let's do it.
The last song is called Im Abendrot and is translated to At Sunset. And at sunset, as one know, it's also a change. But I would say that this song is the one that's closest to not necessarily a change, but it's after the change, looking in to what's there. What is this new? What is this next part of life? Or what is this next that we don't know what is? We talk about it and we fear it or we want to go there. But this is sort of right after looking into it. As with sunset, when you look for the changes and you can sort of see the horizons, you can see the color changes. And you wonder, what's there in between the heaven and the sea in a way? What is going on there?
I love that clip. I love the way she talks about it. And isn't that a line? What's there? What's going on there?
Yeah.
For me, that's become such a seventh house line. Because when we think about the seventh house as the house of relationships, isn't that quite a line for relationships? What's going on there?
Yeah, you can even see it in your fellows as well as your own relationships, right? You watch people outside and you're like, what's happening there? What's going on?
Which is, yeah, so I mean, can we truly know everything about a relationship? I mean, it is what's going on there, because it takes time to get to know people. On a different note, I was doing a reading for an older client earlier this year, and their solar return was very heavy on the seventh house. So we talked about the sunset period of life. It's like, what do you want to be doing in this sunset period of your life? When you look at all that was accomplished and where you are now, and this time that's left, you don't know how much it is. You don't know what's going on there, but what do you want to do? It was a really rich discussion based on that image of the sunset. So if we stick with the image further, we can see how anything that's actually positioned between us and the sunset, it becomes backlit and appears as shadow. We don't know what's going on with the other. And we'll often imagine into that shadow what we want to imagine. So that's where this house can become difficult and challenging. And here's a quote that I found that it's extraordinary. New Age shaman and author Carlos Castaneda imagined, the shadows in the early morning don't tell much. The shadows rest at that time. So it's useless to gaze very early in the day. Around 6 in the morning, the shadows wake up, and they are best. The shadows are best around 5 in the afternoon. That's the seventh house. Then they are fully awake. So it makes sense, because look at when these elephants walk, those shadows are fully awake. Yeah. I mean, and it's what a striking image for the seventh house. And it can be very telling of its quality of light, because I found a chart that is absolutely perfect for this, because here's a pretty powerful stellium in the seventh house. So what we can do is we can take the Hogwarts Express into the chart of world-renowned author J.K. Rowling. And I know she's kind of not very popular right now for a lot of how outspoken she is right now. But
everybody is canceled.
This is true. But this fits her chart so well, because when you think about the world she created, I mean, with that powerhouse of placements in this house where shadows are fully awake, I mean, it seems inevitable that she's going to imagine Harry Potter, a young wizard who faces off against shadowy figures of darkness.
Mm.
I mean, the imagery is there. And if you have read or seen the Harry Potter series, there are the Dementors. I mean, these are living shadows. She uses her own experiences with depression to add to the story with these characters. But it's just so profound to me that with the quality of light in the seventh house, when shadows are at their best and fully awake, that someone would imagine the Dementors. I just find it extraordinary.
Yeah, me too.
So seventh house planets, there's that sense of backlighting and what's going on there. We see the shadow outline, which brings a quality of suggestiveness to them. So here is part 2, which brings us into the world of Nyx. It's very different now, very different down here. Nyx doesn't concern herself with the material and visible world, but she instead brings out that inner world of fantasy and imagination. When I see charts with I just want to add here, when I see charts with a major emphasis on a house under the horizon, I do consider these people children of Nyx, children of the night, because they don't play by regular structured day rules. It's a different world for them. And I found this lovely description of Nyx by author Dr. Ruben Naiman. He explains, Nyx was nocturnal, dwelling in the underworld by day, and emerging at dusk to unveil the night. In a black star-studded gown, she traversed the sky, darkening and cooling the planet in preparation for slumber. Personally, she's my favorite goddess of them all.
Nyx can stay.
Yay. But night tends to get a bad rap in today's world. I mean, it really does, because here's an image of lights at night. We keep night lit up as much as possible. That's not favorable for Nyx. I mean, we can buy night at Target or Walmart, which is essentially keeping night's genie and its genius bottled up. You'll see along the way with these houses, but that I want to let the genius of night out of the bottle. Ta-da!
Yeah, which is an interesting, it will lead to something, but it's interesting to consider the timing that we're in now with so many of us in our homes. And I don't know about other people's experiences, but my children are on a hybrid schedule right now. So their day has been completely changed to night. So now their new schedule is that they are in school regularly from 12 until about 5, and then they have their after school things. So homework around here doesn't usually begin until about 9, and they are in bed around about 2. So it is, and they sleep into the morning time now. And these children have never been happier in school.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm still adjusting.
Yeah.
Right?
I bet, but that's incredible. I hadn't actually heard any, like in all the talk about like schools and stuff like that, I hadn't heard anything like that.
Yeah, so we've got a whole generation of kids who are on a live during the night schedule.
Wow, that's just extraordinary.
Mm-hmm.
Wonder how this will bring Night's genius out into the world in the years to come.
Yeah.
Because what this genius quality taps into, like as James Hillman said in his Revisioning Psychology, what I kind of think of as night consciousness. It's a world of imagination and passion and fantasy and reflection that is neither physical and material on one hand, nor spiritual and abstract on the other. So it's this whole different world of the internal world. And as Giambattista Vico says in his book, The New Science, the weaker its power of reasoning, think of daytime Apollo, very reasonable, and everything has a reason. The weaker its power of reasoning, the more vigorous the human imagination grows. That's my Facebook quote.
Yeah.
So let's take a look, beginning with the 6th house from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock p.m. So this is when the sun has set. And as you said, Stormie, when you saw in California, boop, it's gone below the horizon. But the thing is, its fading light is still present. So this kind of shows us during this twilight time that the 6th house is where day and night exist simultaneously. And as Junichiro Tanizaki says in Praise of Shadows, an extraordinary little epic, if light is scarce, then light is scarce. We will immerse ourselves in the darkness and there discover its own particular beauty. I mean, he could easily be writing of the scarce light of the 6th house with this quote. I mean, you can see this beauty literally in twilight images photography of early pink, blue hues, violet hues. I mean, just these rich colors that come out that you didn't see in any of the images of the sun during the day. So how do we even begin to see this in a chart? Here's a chart that distinctly focused on the 6th house. And this is the chart of legendary fashion designer Yves Saint Laurent. So consider our 12th house example, Giorgio Armani, and what his fashions were all about with the golden hour lighting. Now we're in the opposite house. And Saint Laurent had this stellium of planets in the 6th house. So how did he bring this twilight, the image, sticking with the image of the twilight hours where day and night are present? How did he bring this into his work? Well, an interviewer was writing about him and said his passion for the arts, as his designs were often inspired by artists, they made him feel that his work blurred that boundary between art and fashion. So we're looking symbolically here, where it's not literal day and night, but it's that bringing two things together and sort of blurring the distinctions between them. I mean, check out this line of dresses. I mean, it's impossible to say his work was purely fashion because it was so revolutionary in his time by embodying this artistic quality. And yet it could not be called purely art either, as it was clearly fashion. But we see with him, both were present at the same time. And it filled a lot of his work. Because, I mean, this is the jacket that's known as Le Smoking. I mean, it's that tuxedo jacket and pants that were originally intended for men. But Saint Laurent designed it for women. So we start to ask this question, was it a man's jacket suit or was it a woman's jacket suit? He blurred the lines between both. And there's this line of Russian peasant style clothing, but it's gorgeous with that aesthetic. But what he did was he sewed it all from the richest of fabrics. So he blurred that line between the rich and the poor. And so much of his fashions were embodying this quality of the simultaneity of day and night in one expression. So I like to say, with his haute couture 6th house blending the light of day and night, Saint Laurent was destined to always sew two elements together in his work. And in the process, he became a fashion legend.
Awesome.
Yeah. Another 6th house, pretty strong 6th house person is Fritz Lang. Do you recognize that name at all? He pioneered film noir.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's that whole style of the shadows with just a little bit of lighting. So his entire work brought these two qualities together in an aesthetic that became its own genre. So we see with planets in the 6th house here that light is scarce, so there's a dim lighting about them, but they bring a simultaneous day and night quality. So however we look at that symbolically, and the images of things combined with blurred lines, because distinctions become blurred here. So as the evening shifts into the 5th house, from 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock p.m., the light of the sun has faded and the curtains rise on, ta-da, prime time entertainment. Because when we think about it, these are the hours for theatrical shows and visits to the movie theater and music concerts and prime time television.
Yeah.
So it's another house with hard angular lighting. So when we use the word angular, notice that it's different here than the way we talk about the angular houses regularly, because this is actually referring to the 11th and 5th house axis and the 8th and 2nd house axis. Those are hard lighting houses on those angles. But so when we think about it, that hard lighting, I mean, that's so much about what this house is, because you think of the spotlights of the theater and these dynamic orchestrations of rock concert light shows and an endless array. I mean, there's these manufactured lights in television sets and movie sets that they create all kinds of lighting to match whatever the setting requires. And this actually reveals to us the unique quality of light the 5th house embodies, which is essentially any light you want, any light desired, any color desired. What do you want? It becomes so with the 5th house. A full HD spectrum can be expressed here. So it's like you'd think the house of fun, enjoyment. It's like, who could somebody be like with a strong 5th house? So I see if we want to look at the light of the 5th house in a chart, we can don our wigs, our lipstick, and our stiletto heels and step into the chart of drag queen legend RuPaul Charles, aka RuPaul. So you see, what did I write? The sun, moon, Neptune, and Mercury are lip syncing for their legacy in his 5th house. But really, I mean, the color spectrum. I mean, look at the symbolism in all the different looks that he can put together as a drag queen. I mean, it's just, what does he want to look like? Boom, he makes himself into that, whatever he wants. And we can think about that full spectrum with his career as well. Because what was he? He was a drag queen, an actor, an actress, a model, a singer, a songwriter, a businessman, a talk show host, an author, a mentor, a mother. I mean, it's like this is such a strong quality for his 5th house that anything really is possible with him. Or to quote him directly, life is about using the whole box of crayons.
All the lights, all the colors, get them out here.
Yes, what a 5th house quote. I mean, if you look at Charles Baudelaire with all his 7th and 8th house stuff, he's not going to be saying life is about using the whole box of crayons. It's just not going to happen.
This is beautiful. Oh, look at it.
So when we think of like the drag queens, and this is the house of kids, children, what's amazing is that on all the different seasons and now from countries around the world, all the different versions of Drag Race, RuPaul considers all the contestants on his show his children. And they call RuPaul Mama Ru. And it's like this remarkable relationship that develops that is actually so 5th house between mother and children. And if you've ever watched the series, some of the shows are really moving. The episodes can be really moving when he counsels and kind of cares for children during some of their rough stories. I mean, it's just really extraordinary.
Well, this is just really extraordinary, you know, to see what is created. I always think when I watch drag makeup tutorials and stuff, I'm like, you literally made your eyebrows disappear. That to me is phenomenal. You know what I mean? I'm like,
Yeah.
all the rest of it, but I'm like, your eyebrows are gone. You glued them away. This is amazing.
Yeah. It's just stunning, but it's like it really is where anything is possible. I want different eyebrows. Draw on whatever you want.
There you go.
And they're not always just the natural color that they're after, because I've seen pink eyebrows and yellow eyebrows and green. So it's a perfect place for that kind of expression. So do you think we're cool playing this interview clip? I want to give it a try.
Yeah, let's do it.
So here is RuPaul from quite a while ago, 2008. But I thought he's talking with on interviews. You can find this on YouTube. You can search interviews with Ernie Manaus for the full clip. This is just a little piece. But when you're listening to what they're talking about here, remember how the fifth house is in the realm of Nyx, the goddess of night.
In your life, have you found more prejudice from being African American, from being gay, or from being drag? Which one do you think was the hardest?
I think I've definitely found more prejudice in our culture from being gay than from being black or from being drag queen.
Really? Mm-hmm. Why do you think that is?
I believe that it's linked to, and I have a theory on this, I believe it is linked to the death of the goddess in our culture, goddess energy. I'm not talking about feminine with Hello Kitty and pink furry animals. I'm talking about feminine goddess energy, and how there are theories that there was a conspiracy to shut it down from the church and all this kind of stuff. And I think that the proliferation of the patriarchal culture is the biggest reason that men using femininity, or women using femininity even, is looked down upon, because people are afraid of it. People are afraid of it. People are afraid of a very smart woman.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you think of drag queens and RuPaul's life in that context, I mean, despite this whole patriarchal day world fearing the goddess, which can essentially include fearing the goddess Nyx, by using his fifth house, like the full color spectrum, RuPaul is bringing life to the goddess. And that's what drag does a lot of. It brings life to the goddess.
Love it.
So we see with the fifth house planets here, they bring any light desired. Anything is possible. They can bring a multitude of color and possibility, and symbolic children of all kinds. Another of my favorite examples for here, I don't have her here, but Dolly Parton has a pretty strong fifth house. And when you think about one of her earliest hits, Coat of Many Colors, you can't plan this stuff. You just can't.
Right. Right. And I just love with Dolly, she's like, yeah, I have big old boobs and I did it on purpose. I was like, oh, okay. She's like, but I also love the Lord, so there's that.
And she considers herself backwoods Barbie. So, but if you look up her on the internet, her website for the Imagination Library, it's an extraordinary program where she actually gifts books to children around the world. And by this point, she's in the millions of books that were donated to children. And I think it's up to the age of 6. So it's like, so that they get this ability to read and have the ability to use their imaginations with the different books that are part of the Imagination Library. And it's for children. Again, the house of children, not her literal children, but her symbolic children around the world. Just extraordinary.
Yeah.
So it's the fourth house. It's getting late. Prime time winds down. Night is upon us. And here we enter the fourth house from 10 p.m. to midnight. And it's during these hours that we turn off the lights, close our eyes, and begin to enter the world of dreams. So poet Hermann Hesse wrote in Beim Schlafengehen, which translates as Upon Going to Sleep, which is another of Strauss's 4 last songs. He says, all my senses now want to sink in slumber, and my unguarded soul wants to soar in freest flight within enchanted nighttime circles to live 1,000-fold profoundly. And that's a lot to take in, but I like how Calvin keeps it pretty simple. I have faced all the reality I need to face.
Yes, Calvin with the wind. There we go.
But it's this 4th house imagery where the world of the senses rests and that enchanting inner world of dreams and fantasy begins to wake. And I like to go really deep here because Jung, here's James Hillman talking about Jung. James Hillman was a student of Jung, but he said, if you're in search of soul, go first to your fantasy images, for that is how the psyche presents itself directly. All consciousness depends upon fantasy images. And it's not necessarily just the fantasy as the made up stuff. It's fantasy images of whatever we see when we close our eyes, whatever we imagine, whether we're going to sleep and closing our eyes or even awake and like getting into a meditation. We enter this dream world and the imagination. Both are this world that Jung is kind of pointing us towards here. And we've heard of the 4th house as the beginnings and endings of things. When we think about it, everything begins in imagination, in dreams. I mean, we dream and imagine what we wish our lives to be like when we're little and what we want to do with the rest of our life. The journey of the imagination ends when we make it reality, so to speak, but it continues all the time on many different levels. But again, here the threshold of the 4th house is between dreams and reality. And I wanted to just use a different kind of a chart here because even though this chart is very spread out, it has a distinct 4th house emphasis. And this is for the Broadway debut of The Phantom of the Opera. So if you've seen the show, when you think about it, I mean, it fits what we've been talking about with Jung, because Christine sings, in sleep he sang to me, in dreams he came. So it's this exceptional story about Christine's conflict between her external reality and the seductive, mystical, and terrifying dreamlike underworld of the Phantom. I mean, here's the Phantom's lair, his realm. There's no garish light of day here, as it's a world filled with candlelight. Just like when we close our eyes, it's not a world lit with the technology of the 5th house lighting.
Okay.
There's nothing technological about it. It's all just whatever our fantasy images bring us to. And the Phantom sings, open up your mind, let your fantasies unwind. I mean, this is the seduction and the call of the Phantom. I mean, aren't he and Jung kind of saying the same thing? I don't know how Jung would feel about that, but he also sings, let your mind start a journey to a strange new world, leave all thoughts of the life you knew before. I mean, this is his song, The Music of the Night. And it's this 4th house threshold that we're talking about here. Because it's like, what a line, leave all thoughts of the life you knew before. I just think it's extraordinary. And it's my absolute favorite musical of all time. So on a different note, we can take a look here and see the 4th house through the lens of Emma Watson.
Oh, I love her.
Yeah. I mean, people wouldn't likely know her if you're not familiar with the name. She was Hermione Granger in the Harry Potter films, and she played Belle in Beauty and the Beast. So much of her life lives on this threshold of this fourth house between quotes reality and fantasy, because when she was young, she grew up with Harry Potter. She read the books and it just became such a part of her that to actually, when she talks online, you can find videos where she talks about what it was like to actually realize she was going to be playing Hermione in the movies. It's like a dream come true. So it's like she had Hermione in her actual reality life and the dream of playing her in the movies, in the fantasy world. And it's the same with Beauty and the Beast, because she loved Belle and grew up with the musical, the animated version of it. And here she was playing Belle in Beauty and the Beast, which interestingly enough, both of these films, these stories deal with that same threshold. Because in Harry Potter, we have the Muggles, which is reality, and we have Hogwarts, which is this fantastical world. And with Beauty and the Beast, it's the town she grew up in as the reality, but that world of the inside the castle with the Beast is just this fantastical world where silverware comes to life and sings and clocks talk and everything. So it's just it's a surreal quality. It's just extraordinary. So we see planets in the fourth house reflect a time of going to sleep and closing our eyes. It's this threshold of reality and fantasy. And we see what we see when we close our eyes. And for Jung, it's the beginning of image and soul. And now this is my absolute favorite in this whole presentation, the third house, because as the clock strikes midnight, we enter the third house. So whereas high noon represents the pinnacle of Apollonian clarity and order, midnight and the third house can be considered what I've come to call the heart of Nyx, our nocturnal goddess. So remember, when we were nearing high noon with Ronan Farrow, I mean, that was about as reality and facts and evidence as can be. But here we're at midnight, the actual polar opposite, and upside down from high noon. So midnight here, it's the deepest part of night and the deepest part of the chart. So Nyx's domain of fantasy, imagination, wishes, and dreams, it fills this house. And I love the example of Clive Barker, the horror fantasy author and artist, because here he is with Sun, Saturn, Mercury, and Neptune, all in his third house. And I think of them as these planets beating to the heart of Nyx. And I've come to call it the heart of Nyx, or the heart of the night. I'm working on a third house presentation called the heart of the night.
Well, we'll have you over for that as well.
Oh, thank you. But, you know, and what I love about this realization with Nyx and the goddess of night and this house is that whenever I hear the third house as goddess, I always hear it referred to as the moon bringing that cyclical quality going around the earth. And Artemis, the goddess of the moon, as a well-known goddess. But I've come to understand the quality of this house as the goddess Nyx. I mean, that's the whole shebang. It's just the whole thing, because of how fantastical this house can be. I mean, look, Barker's works there, dozens of short stories and novels, movies, and just a whole array of paintings and graphic novels. But everything he does is woven with the threads of night. I mean, you don't see these folks walking around Target or Walmart at 2 in the afternoon. You just don't. But this quote just blows me away still. Like, I started all this research 2 years ago, more than 2 years ago now, but this quote just blows my mind, where James Hillman says, each dream is a child of night, affiliated closely with sleep and death, and with, here it is, forgetting all that the daily world remembers. So like, to understand Clive Barker's work from this perspective, I mean, consider this quote, because the third house is a time of dreams. And when dreams forget what we know of the daily, the day world, what does it do? It opens up infinite possibilities. And here's a little audio clip that I have from Clive Barker's film Nightbreed. It's about a forgotten underworld tribe of monsters and shapeshifters with supernatural abilities, and they live below a cemetery, so underground, the world of Nyx. So in Nightbreed, one of the main characters, Lori, a day-dwelling human, enters the world of the Nightbreed and is caught off guard by what she sees around her. And this picture here is of Rachel, who we'll hear speaking. She explains to the disoriented Lori.
You still don't understand. You're below now, with the Nightbreed. The last survivors of the great tribes.
Okay, tribes of what?
We're shapeshifters, freaks. Remains of races that your tribe have almost driven to extinction.
So you're not immortal?
Far from it. The sun can kill some of us. Like Babette, some of us can be shot down. Others can survive that because they've gone beyond death.
This is too weird.
To be able to fly? To be smoke? Or a wolf? To know the night and live in it forever. That's not so bad. You call us monsters, but when you dream of flying and changing and living without death.
Oh, I mean, this is the third house. I mean, to the day world and to our day psyches, the imagination of this nocturnal world can mirror Lori's reaction. This is too weird. But in the house of the goddess, the weird and the fantastical can be just the beginning. Do you get it? It's just, and you know, Stephen King has a really strong third house. Tim Burton, really strong third house. They bring Nyx, they give life to Nyx. And you know, if it's a little too much for anybody who's tuning in here, I thought I'd use a little bit more of a practical example, sort of.
Sort of.
You'll see, because this is a strong third house. We see Sun, Jupiter, Neptune, and Chiron. And it's actually opera legend and diva, and my first great opera love, Jessie Norman. And she's just extraordinary. She passed away a couple years ago. I forget time in COVID world, but it's like, it was just heartbreaking when she passed away. But her voice was just extraordinary. I remember hearing or reading, I think it's in the New York Times, they described her voice as a mansion. And you enter so many different rooms when she sings that it's just extraordinary. So here she is. This is a short clip, but listen, because we know the third house, it's often includes early education. That's very practical. So when we think of what Hillman said about dreams as children of night, listen to how Ms. Norman connects early education and dreams.
So I'm, in a way, it's odd that you ended up going into an art form which was perhaps the least contemporary, the least connected to what was unfolding in America at the time.
Precisely.
Why did you do that?
It's important to understand that arts education, having a music teacher at age 5 or 6 that tells you about the great violinists of the world, the great orchestras of the world, and plays this music for you to hear, this gives you space to dream.
Isn't that extraordinary? It just, the clip goes on. You can find it on YouTube, BBC Hard Talk, just Jessie Norman, BBC Hard Talk. But what a line. I mean, how extraordinary. What a way to paint the third house. And she did it with her life, because further on in the clip, in the longer version, she says, my thoughts about what my life could be were certainly not limited to what the circumstances of my life were. And she became all these different figures on stages around the world. Ariadne, actually, I can't even pretend to know some of the other ones in Tannhäuser, and yeah, it's just extraordinary. The middle picture is from Ariadne off Naxos, which is just one of her most incredible performances, completely, just extraordinary. So in the third house, we see midnight to 2 a.m. Planets here, I call it the heart of the night, the heart of Nyx, and it goes very deep. And it can be the foundation of your imagination, as Jesse Norman says in another speech that she gave. But what it does is this house connects us to the fantastical, the eternal, the wildest dreams, and the larger than life. It just has that quality about it. So we're in the course of a 24-hour day. So the second house hours from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock p.m.
Yeah.
You know, they're there you go, Stormie. But they're perhaps the most unknown of all hours, right? I mean, a lot of people are asleep and dreaming because it's past even staying up late. But this mysterious quality of these hours, it inevitably reflects the quality of light or darkness in the second house, because it connects us with what is dark, hidden, mysterious, and unknown, the dark of night. I'm like, okay, but what does that look like in a chart? We can adjust our eyes with the help of poet, writer, farmer, and environmental activist Wendell Berry, with Mercury, Venus, Mars, and Pluto in the dark of night of his second house. So Berry helps us use night vision to see how mystery is reflected in a chart, because his poetry includes many references to forests, those dark, mysterious places hidden from light. And the second house is particularly vivid in his To Know the Dark. This is my favorite poem of all time. To go in the dark with a light is to know the light. To know the dark, go without sight, and find that the dark too blooms and sings and is traveled by dark feet and dark wings. I've come to see this as a second house poem. Do you relate to this, Stormie, with your strong second house?
Yeah, and it's super practical too. It's like, well, you can't do it that way. Just go in here and see what's in here. But definitely this illumination of what's just outside of that normal dark.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just very deep. And I won't play the full poem, but
in a country once forested.
In his poem In a Country Once Forested, he actually imagines the mysterious and unknown psychology of soil. It's like, is there any darker place than underground in soil and imagining what it's thinking, what it's imagining? He says, under the soil under the grass is dreaming of a young forest, and under the pavement, the soil is dreaming of grass. It's a remarkable perspective. And people with strong focus above the horizon might not really, they'd be like, what? Huh?
They're all, I'm good. Move on from the soil.
But it's such a nocturnal, poetic, beautiful goddess Nyx imagination here. And I think it runs in the family too, because he has a poem To the Unseeable Animal. And it starts off with a quote from his daughter where she says, I hope there's an animal somewhere that nobody has ever seen. And I hope nobody ever sees it.
Ooh. Very nice.
So planets in the second house show us how we navigate the unknown, how we head into the unknown, and what is unknown about us. Another example of strong second house is Gene Roddenberry, creator of Star Trek. To boldly go where no man has gone before, or now no one has gone before. I mean, look at what he brought into our world with his strong second house. Just extraordinary.
Yeah, he brought
So
Captain
here we
Kirk.
are. What's that?
He brought Spock and Captain Kirk.
Totally.
Right? LeVar Burton with those sunglasses. I had those. I got
did you?
yeah, the ones that were
Nice.
like that.
Could you actually see through them?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So here we are, the first house is the night is nearing its end and a new day is about to begin. We find ourselves in the first house from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock a.m. The sun is ascending and the darkness of night begins to ebb away as the sun's light, but not yet the sun itself, appears, which brings this early morning glow. Daylight is near, and it's within these hours that many of us, like the new day itself, we wake up and we open our eyes. So waking up and opening our eyes symbolizes this first house quality of light, just as planets located here represent awakening or opening one's eyes to something previously unseen. And to see this in a chart, I like to say, let's get dressed to the nines and look to opera legend. You can tell I love opera. Leontine Price. With Sun, Mercury, Venus, and Jupiter hitting the high notes in her first house. So again, painting with a broad brush, we're looking at the first house, very strong first house in this chart. Price was actually the first African-American opera singer to gain international stardom, but it wasn't an instant achievement, as many people kept their eyes and ears closed. See, in early 1955, NBC televised what it called its opera theater, and Price sang Puccini's Tosca. She became the first African-American to appear in a leading role in televised opera. Yet many stations around the country actually canceled the broadcast in protest, including her hometown station in Laurel, Mississippi. They all deemed her appearance unacceptable. But nevertheless, she gave a stellar performance, and it opened doors to opera stages around the world. And 11 years later, she opened the new Metropolitan Opera at Lincoln Center. So here's an edited clip.
Now she was asked to open the new Met at Lincoln Center.
I'm grateful to God for this privilege, this honor. I am exhilarated beyond belief and excited completely out of my skin. I am also excited too, Mr. Bing, because tonight my hometown, Laurel, Mississippi, is now connected with our broadcast, and this makes me so proud of them. I cannot possibly tell you.
See, the eyes and ears of Laurel, Mississippi were opened.
Wow.
And throughout her career, I mean, she held people's attention in profound ways. She consistently insisted, I am here and you will know that I am the best and will hear me. The color of my skin or the kink of my hair or the spread of my mouth has nothing to do with what you are listening to. So through this example and throughout her career, Price opened the eyes and ears of people around the world to issues of racial inequality, as well as beautiful, beautiful opera music. And I'll skip this because it's a music that I don't want you to get dinged by. But we see with the 4 to 6 o'clock a.m. hours. Planets here represent what you are waking up to or waking others up to. It's what holds and keeps attention and how you pay attention to the world. So through these last 24 hours, all in the time that we've been together, stuck with the images of the quality of light of the 12 houses, from the golden hour luxury of the 12th house through the opening of eyes in the first house. So I hope you've had a sense of how varied and distinct these images are throughout the day, and how sticking with the image can help you look deeper into the 12 houses. Ta-da! So just and if anybody goes back to watch parts of this, here are places you can do screen captures of the houses above the horizon and just the summary of them. And here is below the horizon. So thank you. Here's a little what I'm up to.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, this will be so great. Look, there's plenty of places that we can come and find you and listen and see what you have going on.
Yeah, the next big thing is in December, I'll be talking with the Minnesota Jung Association on the age of Aquarius, subtitled An Archetypal View of Possible Futures. Because did you know Jung actually wrote a book on UFOs called Flying Saucers? And there's something about Aquarius and life on other planets. So I'm taking an archetypal look at Uranus, Saturn, the water bearer, and possible futures that Uranian, Saturnian, Aquarian qualities may present to us in the next 2,000 years of the age of Aquarius.
Wow.
So yeah.
Where are the two in the middle? Where are you presenting those two at?
To be determined through our local astrology organization.
Okay.
And then the other Age of Aquarius talk in April will be for OPA, the Organization for Professional Astrology, at their spring conference. That one's subtitled Awakening Idyllic Utopia or Haunting Dystopia, which is a look at the astrology behind those two dynamics, with more to come on that.
Yeah.
Don't want to say too much.
Sure. Don't give away all the sauce. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
And here,
oh
it's out online. So if you would like to join NCGR North Star Astrology, my local Minnesota astrology community, we're welcoming Stormie on December 5th to present on Saturn as an instigator of faith. You can find the event listed on Eventbrite and register. So come listen to Stormie talk.
Yeah, this is going to be a good talk. I'm actually really, really excited about it. So
awesome. Can't wait. It seems so far away, but next thing we know, it'll be here.
I know. Well, I'm recording the January videos right now, so it is going to be here quicker than we know. That is always like an indicator of like where we're at space and time wise, is like what I'm recording. It's interesting that it works that way. Man, Shane, this was incredible, and lots of beautiful feedback down below, different look at the houses, things people never even thought to think about.
That, that's where I went with this myself. Like I told you before, it's like the 9th house for me is proving really challenging to actually grasp in this light. I mean, I get there, but that's the one that took me the longest time. But it's actually all about what Jung says, sticking with the image. Mm-hmm. And when you stick with something long enough, I think it was Erin Sullivan. I remember a quote from her, because as you've seen in this talk, when I hear a quote that just sticks with me, I capture it. And Erin Sullivan said something to the extent of, when you look at something long enough, you start to see something that you never noticed before.
Yeah.
And that's what has happened with the houses through this exploration for me. It's a work in progress. Something may change, something new may be discovered, but I just love I don't know. I love it. I'm so proud of this work.
That is so beautiful to hear. It is neat to do something and really feel like you've poured into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, nothing but good things to say over here. I loved the work. It seems like it was
Yay.
beautifully well received here. I'm sorry you didn't get to eat your buttery snack, but there was so
Yeah, I
much to
forgot
share.
about it. It was sitting right in front of me, but
A little something for later.
absolutely.
Oh my goodness. Okay, you guys, I will make sure that Shane's information is in the description box down below this video so you can go visit him, check out talks, follow us all the way around the virtual speaking space because it is a good year to learn some astrology. Man, oh man, is it. So thank you guys so much for showing up. And hopefully we gave you something today that was worth the time you took to listen. And Shane, you are absolutely, absolutely welcome back.
Thank you so much, Stormie. Thank you for inviting me. And I look forward to getting to know more about you and hearing your astrology and everything in days to come and times to come. So thank you so much. You're a pleasure.
Thank you. All right, you guys, we're going to wrap up and we will see you on Friday where we will have Natai here and we're going to talk about the nodes. So grab your chart and we're going to dig into some nodal concepts and work and explanation. So we look forward to seeing you then. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thanks for joining.